segment. Who needs Daniel Stark? Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers is an outfit that, if you get into a situation on the road, if you are hit, right, wrongfully injured, and the insurance company, like they tend to do, is putting the screws to you, okay? Before it even gets there, if you get into a wreck and you're scared and you're not sure and it wasn't your fault, call Daniel Stark, okay? That's the first thing you do, all right? And you go from there because they will help you navigate a situation like that, which can be so trying and so difficult. And on the other side, you usually come out, if the case is appropriate for them, you come out whole, okay? When we talk about who needs Daniel Stark in the college basketball world, in the Big 12, the Baylor Bears, they need help, dude. And they might need a Daniel Stark injury lawyer type situation because it's a wreck right now. Now, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but the team is 0-3, okay? TCU loss. That was tough, right? That was a game they probably, when you look at the Big 12 schedule, okay, those are games, if you want to be competitive, you really can't lose, right? TCU is beatable. Other games, like, Cam, come on, join us real quick. Who did Baylor lose to in game 2?
Iowa State.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two top 10 teams they lost to in the last week, but also that is what the Big 12 is, Pete. Like,
yeah, but here's my concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's not getting your ass kicked like they did at home against Houston. They were down by as much as 29 points. They were turned over 16 times. They could only generate 5 turnovers, right? By Houston. And is this a situation where Scott Drew can right the ship? Like, does Baylor have the talent? Because I look at Tunde Yesufu and I look at Cameron Carr and I think, yeah, they do. But is the rest of the squad around them so lacking that maybe they don't? I think James Najee will continue to develop and get better, by the way.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it. Like, overall, they don't have that talent. Like last year, you were talking about probably almost the same thing, obviously to a different extent. Like,
yeah.
We knew that was a tournament team, but not much else, right? And that team had a top 5 pick on their team. Like, Tunde Yesufu is a good player, but he might not even be in the lottery at this point. He's a first rounder, but probably outside the lottery. And so, like, when you're talking about that kind of talent discrepancy, on the other end, you had VJ Edgecombe leading the way. You had a really good battle-tested guy like Norchad Omier. That's a different 1-2 punch than Cam Carr, Tunde Yesufu. I just don't think they have the talent to compete with these top end Big 12 teams for 40 minutes. We saw that against Iowa State on Wednesday. Tamin Lipsey just kind of took over at the end of the game. And I was honestly coming out of that, like, not all that down. I was like, okay, you hung with him most of the game. You had a nice energetic first half, and Tamin Lipsey kind of did you in at the end. Houston, I got this feeling early in the game, even when they were winning, first couple of minutes, they hit a couple threes, and Fanta's doing the game. And he's saying, Baylor, not a good 3-point shooting team. Houston will give them that. And I'm like, he's exactly right. Like, this was, it reminded me of this story of when my dad was at UT in his brief time at UT. And Phi Slamma Jamma, bringing it back to Houston, came and played at the Drum. And UT was horrible. My dad claims that by the end of the season, their starting backcourt started the year as cheerleaders. Like, like they were so terrible. And they had a 10-0 lead on Phi Slamma Jamma, and the place was going nuts. And they lost like 91-45 or something. Like, they just got absolutely shellacked. And that's what it felt like in that Baylor game. It was like 15-9. And then, like, the next media timeout, it's 29-17. And you're like, what happened? And that's obviously the entire second half. Yeah, they do not have the horses in the stable. Like, that's why James Najee's on the roster. Like, they don't have enough. And, can Scott Drew turn it around? Maybe he can make them a tournament team. I think that's a long shot when this is the gauntlet that you're facing, when this is the schedule you're facing every night. And to your point, you didn't even get one over TCU. Like,
yeah, that's the game you got to win.
Yeah.
And one of these two, by the way, Iowa State and Houston, they were both home games. So it's like you would have been nice to split that if you mean business. And this league is, as Bill Self said, a bitch. I mean, it really, really is. Keep in mind that there's a little bit more breathing room because the schedule's down to 18 conference games this year, as it was 20 last year. But unfortunately for Baylor, they filled a lot of those games, or a couple of those games, with really less than opponents. And one, that doesn't help out your net or Ken Palm or whatever the hell as you come down the stretch.
Tournament. Yep.
Yeah, to try and get in the tournament. And two, and Scott Drew knows gazillion times more than me about scheduling in college basketball, but I don't know that it got your guys ready. I mean, they don't look ready against.
You don't think Arlington Baptist gets some battle tested? I think Rockland High played them the other day, actually.
Arlington Baptist, I called the game. After they hit a three to take a 3-2 lead, called timeout so they could take a picture of the scoreboard. Like, I'm sorry. That's not great, man. Yeah. I saw that happen one other time when I was working for USA Basketball on this women's team with like Candace Parker. We went to this tournament of the Americas, and they were beating teams like 160-20. And they were, the other girls were asking for pictures and autographs afterwards. Like, that's not good for your team as far as like going forward and being battle tested. I think that doesn't help at this point in time.
He needs to find a middle ground, because in the recent years it's been either this or Gonzaga at a neutral site in Spokane, or Michigan State at a neutral site in Detroit. Like, we've got to find. And even they played Memphis in Memphis this year at the Grizzlies.
I liked last year. You were at the game where they played Arkansas at American Airlines.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
You know it's going to be it's going to be more Arkansas in the crowd, but it's not 98% to 1.5% in media. Like, that's not what it's going to be like it is in Spokane or Detroit, or I guess in Memphis too, but I don't know.
Where does this Baylor team need the most help?
Oh, geez. I mean, it kind of is everywhere, Pete. Although they could, if this team had shooters, I think they could get away with it. I think they could get in the tournament. If you had a couple of guys who were just really streaky, for Baylor people, it's like the Brady Heslop type. If you had two of those guys and they can't do too much for you, like outside of hitting threes, and the nights where the shot's not going in, it's just not your night. But some of the nights it does go in, and maybe it's that Iowa State game on Wednesday, and you've got a top 5 victory. That's incredible. But they need help everywhere, but I would say the quickest fix would be if they had that, especially in today's college basketball. If you just had a couple of guys who could come off the bench and be straight up shooters and they get hot, then you could fake your way into the tournament. But that's a cop-out way of saying Baylor needs help everywhere, man.
Here's my biggest fear as a guy who roots for this program. Like, this is now Baylor's, like, we're moving down the line with this NIL deal. And it's like, are we not good at this? Like, and I say we because I love the Bears, and I stay down the middle of the road if I call a game. But did they you know what I mean? Because Scott Drew is a special guy, and he had the ability to bring in a certain type of player when the playing field was more level. I talked to somebody this weekend about why is Kansas struggling? And flat out, this person knows a lot about college hoops, and they're a big part of college hoops. They were like, everybody else gets to pay players too now. Like, it's different, man. It is. Yeah. And we're going to see there's more and more changes. I think I am still stuck in like 1996. My brain is when I see these programs and the logos and stuff, and that's just not the case anymore. Really.
Pete's thinking like, man, I gotta put a lot of money on Georgetown this weekend.
Let's go.
He's like UMass. Oh man,
I'm still getting over the Craig Esherick years and the Derek Kellogg years. All right, look, let me do one. I'm going to do one segment. No, not segment. Give me 5 minutes on my trip to BYU, and then we'll get out of here. So, I go to Provo for the game on Wednesday night. I get there last Tuesday. Now, this is working with NBC this year. ESPN doesn't have as many Big 12 games, right? But NBC does. I shouldn't say NBC doesn't have as many Big 12 games as ESPN did, but they have a bunch. And, you know, it was really cool to get the opportunity calling games for NBC now, some games, to do a Big 12 game, particularly to do a game at BYU. It was amazing to see. So I did the game with Brendan Haywood, right? Brendan Haywood's a phenomenal athlete. Phenomenal. I meant to say he still is probably a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal analyst. He's like very, very good. He called the NCAA tournament last year for CBS. Like the guy is really at the top of his game and at the top of his profession. And his career took him from every crazy environment in the ACC, right? Carolina, Duke, to every wild environment in the NBA, right? He won a championship with Dallas. He was on some of those Wizards teams that, you know, went toe-to-toe with the Cavs and the Bulls in the playoffs. Like, the guy has seen it all. And I was anxious to get his reaction to the crowd in Provo because I can tell you, having called games in the Big 12 for years, you know, I was out there doing games before Mark Pope really – you know, started to have it hitting on all cylinders, like as he grew, right? As the pendulum swung. And by the way, it still has not swung back, right? This program is the exact opposite of what I was just talking about with Baylor. Like clearly they have figured out a way to navigate this NIL space, right? And the crowd, though, hasn't changed. The people haven't changed. And it's really been fun to see. Okay, now you've got AJ DeBonsa. Now you've got Robert Wright III, who, by the way, for the record, I went down to the floor before the game. I said, "What's up, Rob?" Because, you know, we got like the Philly thing going. He knows I'm from Philly, and we've talked a little bit before. I was like, "Yo, can I call you Rob Wright?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't care." I was like, "So there's no, like, you don't want Robert Wright III?" And he's like, "No, I do not care." I was like, "You swear you don't care?" He's like, "I don't care." He was probably thinking, "Get away from me. I'm trying to warm up." But I was like, all right. And so that's the word on that, right? From the horse's mouth. Okay. And you factor in Richie Saunders and his development, right? Since Kevin Young has gotten to Provo, he legit, and we talked to Kevin Young about this. He told Richie Saunders, "Hey, dude, you can play in the NBA." And it's wild in life and in coaching, obviously, and in being a player. When somebody believes in you, it can flip a switch. And it's very clear that since Kevin Young got that job at BYU and looked Richie Saunders in the eyes and said, "You can play in the NBA," something happened. And Richie Saunders now is one of the best players in college basketball. Okay? Like, that is something you need to take into consideration. Amazing development. So you've got DeBonsa, Wright, Saunders, and an amazing supporting cast. And you have an environment that is terrifying to play in. And it's also jarring. I don't know that any kid that grew up in, let's say, Chicago or New York City or Philly for that matter. Rob talks about Rob Wright, the first trip he took to Provo last year with Baylor. You're not ready for that environment. You're not ready to shoot into a student section with like a gazillion hands and those things that spin around that make you dizzy. I mean, it is a scene, dude. And I was so proud that it lived up to expectations because I told Brendan, I said, "Look, I'm going to ask you in the open what you think about this environment." And right now, this is like 10 minutes before the game. I said, right now it's not reflective of what it's going to be like, but I'm asking you that. And boy, I asked him that, and it was a genuine, authentic answer. He was shocked in the best way possible. One thing about Rob, this is like a little inside baseball, and we'll wrap up here because I know Cam has a show to do, and you know everybody's got to get on with their life. But Rob is like kind of like one of the cool kids now, and this is what I mean. Like when he's always going to be super nice because that's who he is. He's always going to be a really good person because that's who he is. Like, trust me, he is from many sources. But I went down to talk to him, and like he's with AJ DiBanza, and they're like the cool kids. You know what I mean? Like, so I go up to Rob and I talk to him. I ask him about his name. He had already said hi to me at shoot around. So he's probably like, all right, enough of this guy. And then he's with AJ. And I said something to AJ. And AJ was nice, but he was like, you know, that's the kind of guy, like everybody's pulling at him. So he was kind of like, yeah, like I was like, and Rob is kind of like, you know, with AJ now, I felt like an outsider, which I was, and am around players of that ilk and being young kids. But for me, I was like, oh man, like this is like back my freshman and sophomore year in high school when I was really skinny and had big ears and, you know, no girls would talk to me. And like, I just saw those dudes are the coolest guys on the block to the point where it's a little intimidating. They're both great people. By the way, I got a chance to talk to AJ's dad, Ace. It's no surprise this is such an amazing young man, and he's been able to handle all this stuff and be unflappable as he has been. His dad was 20 years as a cop in Boston, at Boston University. He grew up in Brockton. His mother and his father live in Provo with him with his little sister, who's a volleyball star. But they're just like great people. His dad is like this amazing, charismatic guy who is not like your typical sports dad, right? What do they call it? Like a manager or a momager or something like that?
Oh, I thought you were going with like helicopter parent.
Helicopter parent, yeah. Cam, you sent me a text. What is this?
Oh, that's for later. I did want to add a note, though, about Rob Wright, as you're kind of talking about BYU and the whole intimidating atmosphere. Don't know if you remember, last year, Baylor played there and lost in overtime. Rob Wright hit 2 free throws to send it to OT with like 4 seconds left in the game. It was the last possession. That place gets nuts. But anyway, helicopter parent.
By the way, Drake Tol, I was talking to Jake Hatch out there from Locked On, and it's like, you know, Drake is going out there, but it's like, I mean, you know, Hatch is so in on Drake, and so am I. Yeah. But I was like, dude, if you talk to Toll, and he's like, it was like, stop the presses. Oh, yeah. He's coming out here. Drake's coming out here for like a couple of, like, Drake Tol is amazing. Like, he is like, he's probably doing shows from like the top of the mountain where the Y is. Like who knows with that cat, you know, but like, his reputation and presence precedes him, particularly in Provo. You know? Yeah. But the BYU trip was amazing. There's actually another wrinkle to it that I'll tell people at some point. Like, we didn't have a show on Thursday or Friday because I had like a bit of a medical episode. I'm doing all right. But we'll share it at some time because now that everything is okay, it's a pretty good story. But we don't have time today. We do have time to say goodbye. The Pete Souza Show is back tomorrow. I think we may be talking to Christian Fourier again. On Wednesday, I know we're talking to Babe Laufenberg. By the way, I've still been wearing it, baby. This is the shit right here. Live like Luke, right? Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. And join us Wednesday. I'll give you more insight when we talk to Babe Laufenberg. The Pete Souza Show is presented by Savachix. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Chris Visser. Man, thank you, Chris Myers. An amazing interview. We're going to put all this stuff up on YouTube so you can check it out. Like, subscribe, the whole deal. We'll see you tomorrow.
It's the Pete Souza Show. Sports.